Lord Mayor is in the chair. This council meeting will be streamed live and recorded for publishing to the internet. Please note that an audio and visual recording is being taken of this meeting. This means that your presence at and any contribution you make to the meeting may be collected, used, disclosed or published publicly by the Council, including transferring outside Australia.
Good evening. Firstly, I acknowledge acknowledgement of country. Council acknowledges that we're meeting on traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pays respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations people who are present today. Item 2. The Council also acknowledges the vision of Colonel William Light in determining the site of Adelaide and the design of the city with its 6 squares and surrounding belt of continuous parklands, which is recognised on the National Heritage List as one of the greatest examples of Australia's planning heritage. Item 3, this is headed Prayer. It's a moment of contemplation of the gravity and implications of our decision-making. I invite members to read the prayer as printed or reflect in a manner appropriate to their beliefs on these issues. Now I'll ask all those present to stand in silence in memory of those who gave their lives in defence of their country at sea, on land and in the air. Thank you, members. May I just draw members' attention to the fact that the clock is incorrect this evening. So I apologise. It looks as if this meeting may be finished before we're scheduled to start. We have apologies from the Deputy Lord Mayor, who isn't attending this evening, but I think everyone else is present. In respect of the confirmation of minutes, I would ask that we have someone move the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 11th of April, with the exception of that part of the minutes related to minute 32, item 18.1, which will be dealt with later in the meeting as it's part of the confidential agenda. So if we could take it as read and confirmed that this part is confirmed as an accurate record of proceedings. Moved by Councillor Abrahimzadeh, seconded by Councillor Giles. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. Item 7 is deputations. We have none this evening. Item 8 is petitions. Again, we have none. I'm moving on now to item 9, which is 9.1 is firstly our requirement to fix the common seal on a funding deed from the state government, as recommended by the Infrastructure and Public Works Committee. Moved by Councillor Snape, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Unless there's any contrary view, all those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. 9.2 is just a matter of noting that the Audit and Risk Committee met on the 12th of April. Could someone move, noting Councillor Abrahimzadeh and seconded by Councillor Siebentreut? Thank you. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you, members. 10.1 is the requirement to appoint 3 council members to be part of the Adelaide Economic Development Agency Board member selection panel. Could I ask that someone move firstly that we decide to appoint 3 council members? Moved by Councillor Abrahimzadeh, seconded by Councillor Siebentreut. All those in favour? That's carried. So now we have to take nominations for the appointment of councillors. Councillor Snape.
I would like to nominate Councillor New, Councillor Giles
I think that I might well take the advice that's been given so regularly that perhaps it's better that I'm not on the selection committee, as I'm also a member of this board. So I decline respectfully, but thank you for the generous nomination. Councillor Abraham-Sadeh.
Lord Mayor, can I nominate Councillor Kouros?
Councillor Kouros. Then we have 3 nominations. We have any contrary views? If there are no contrary nominations, I think they're elected unopposed. So we would move now the appointments of Councillor Kouros, Councillor Giles and Councillor Noon. Would someone move those motions? Councillor Siebentritt moving, seconded by Councillor Snape. Should we declare an interest and ask the nominees to leave the room? No, there's no remuneration, so there's no conflict. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. Congratulations, members. The next item is the report of my activities. We attended a Capital City Committee meeting with the Premier, the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, the Minister for Tourism, the Minister for Housing and Urban Development, as well as executives of relevant departments. We discussed opportunities for partnerships and infrastructure projects, but particularly agreed to support the development of an adaptive reuse forum, which we've been talking about, that being adaptive reuse above retail and of underutilised office space. That will be auspiced by the Capital City Committee on the morning of the 5th of May, and all members are invited. We also unveiled the portrait of Auntie Shirley Peasley, and I should acknowledge the previous Lord Mayor and Chamber for this initiative in creating portraits of women, and I look forward to hanging Auntie Shirley's portrait soon. I've also met the new CEO of the Committee for Adelaide and officiated at a citizenship ceremony when 26 individuals received Australian citizenship. This session was held in this chamber, and we're trying to hold these events more frequently so that one doesn't accumulate over 100 conferees, which makes it rather bulky and difficult to manage. I expect we'll have 4 sessions a year. I also attended the Anzac Day Dawn service, viewed the commemorative march in the company of the Governor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Davis, who attended the Light Horse Memorial, and Councillor Elliott, who attended the Garden of Remembrance ceremony representing our council. We have, of course, also congratulated the Premier on the activities in the last few weeks, whether the Gather Round or Live, but also we have been in communication with the State Tourism Portfolio to better align ways of communicating about events, road closures and street maintenance programs for major events and parklands activities. So could I ask that someone move, noting of my report, moved by Councillor Snape, seconded by Councillor Abraham-Sadeh. Thank you very much. And now moving on to 12.1, where one can see an extraordinary number of activities that councillors have attended. And unless there's any discussion about that, could I ask that someone move as printed 12.1, parts 1, 2 and 3, moved by Councillor Abraham-Sadeh, seconded by Councillor Noon. Unless there's a comment or questions, all those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, members. We have no questions on notice, so I'll move on to questions without notice. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Took the liberty of preparing it just so I don't lose my spot. On the 22nd of December last year, I was advised that the Rundle Street to North Terrace section of the Frome Street Bikeway was due to commence work in April, with the project completed in June. Works are yet to commence. On the 16th of April, I requested an update from administration on the project and have not yet received a response. My question is, what is the cause for the delay and what is the current project timeline? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I'm not able to respond to that. Can I ask someone in the team, maybe?
Thank you through the chair, Mr. Philippou, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. The report, the work that was undertaken, there was a question on notice in relation to the costings of that project, and that then formed part of a funding arrangement with the state that needed to be re-established. or reconfigured, and that I think only occurred last month, so we're then able to go out to market for procurement of that work.
If I may ask a follow-up question, Lord Mayor, does that mean the project is still out for tender?
I'll have to take that on notice to see if it has gone to tender yet, but I think it formed part of the full procurement plan for this quarter, so I don't know if it hit the market yet.
We'll ask Mr Philippou to respond before the end of the week with the details as asked. Thank you. Can we move on then to motions on notice? The first item, 15.1, should be deferred until, or held over until the next council meeting when the Deputy Lord Mayor is in attendance. He's requested that he would like to speak on that matter, so we will accept that deferral. 15.2, Councillor Snape, related to Wi-Fi in Victoria Park.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll put the motion to the floor and seek a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Noon.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief, as it is a simple motion simply asking for an investigation, not anything further at this point. So I am asking that the Council investigate the possibility of having the Adelaide 3 Wi-Fi extended to cover the eastern portion, sorry, the western portion, I believe. Yep, western side of Victoria Park. The thinking behind that is, and I've had multiple requests from residents who perhaps go along to events, they go to watch their kids play some sports, and they sit there and watch, and it'd be good if community members be able to access the free Wi-Fi quite simply. So because it is an actively used park, I think it would make sense for us to consider a future expenditure in extending that service, but of course the investigation has to come first. So I'll put that to the
Could I just refer you to the administration comment and the costings underneath? Is that insufficient for your purposes?
Well, the investigation isn't just about costing. The investigation is what the next steps would be towards actually doing some, creating that free Wi-Fi and bringing that report back to the chamber, which I would then seek further support from the chamber to push. But that's the next step.
Okay. So this is not a decision, this is just further report about the cost, the implications and what it would take to actually install 100,000 per access point. Councillor Moore?
I support this because it's an investigation, and I think it's valid based on ratepayers' comments.
So unless there's a contrary view, we'll put that to the vote. All those... Oh, sorry, Councillor Abraham-Sadeh.
Lord Mayor, just a couple of questions, if I may. In terms of the Adelaide Free Wi-Fi network, is the administration able to just provide some commentary around the extent or boundaries, roughly, of where this network usually covers?
Yes, I think I asked that question through me. Could you respond?
Thank you through the chair. I thought there might be a link associated with our admin comment that showed the map of where the rollout is. There are. We have been asked to consider access points into parkland areas, particularly those areas that are used more frequently than other parkland areas. But Steve, do you have a bit more information you're able to share, please?
Through you, thank you, CEO, through you, Chair. It's a legitimate question. What we can produce, I think, Councillor, your question first was where the current map is of access areas, which we'll be able to produce, and we can send that out and take it on notice and send it out to members.
Thank you.
Then a follow-up, if I may, Lord Mayor. If this part of the parklands is flagged to have free Wi-Fi, then are we able to, in the same investigation, are we able to identify other parts of the parkland that might have high foot traffic? I know southern parklands, for example, Adelaide City has their training grounds there. They've got Comets in the western part of the parkland, so are we able to sort of identify high foot traffic areas within the parklands and go further than the western part of the Victoria Park, as the motion suggests?
I will pass it over to the CEO. In passing, I have to say I switch off the Wi-Fi everywhere in the city because it actually slows down my 3G or 4G or 5G.
Thank you, through the chair. From memory, I think as I mentioned earlier, we were asked to consider parkland spaces for this new rollout of the free Wi-Fi. So perhaps when we respond to the motion, if it's endorsed tonight, we can certainly make sure we provide further information in relation to our, where those other points are and whether there is opportunity to do more. A lot will depend on how the funding is tracking, because it is externally funded through the Adelaide City deal.
So unless you have comments to make, Councillor, I think Councillor Noon. Sorry, Councillor Kouros, sorry.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Is it possible then, if the mover would like to amend his motion, because it's asking for an investigation in just one part of the parklands, and the recommendation that the administration comment is very clear. It comes down to money more than anything else. But if we're going to be looking at ways in which we can expand on the service and what the costings will be beyond just the where the mover is suggesting, could we have it amended so we can have a more broader investigation in the motion? Because I don't know what I'm voting for. Am I voting for just one investigation into one section of the parklands, or am I voting for, as per what the administration has said that they will do? I mean, it doesn't seem to be very clearly defined, because what I see from this, Lord Mayor, is that it is a budget implication more than anything else.
I think that we could amend the wording, if you were prepared to, Councillor Snape.
No. Bottom line is, I'm happy to support a future motion that comes to the table if you want to recommend alternative.
Could you speak through the chair?
Sorry, through you, Chair. Apologies. I'd be happy to support future motions that suggested other areas where we could research this. However, I don't want this turning into a camel or being blown out bigger than Ben-Hur. It's a simple motion for one specific area after requests from constituents. So therefore, I respect what councillors are trying to do, but I would prefer a separate motion at a later date.
I suspect that the investigation will give the costings and the capacity to do this in the parklands, and it will be a simple multiplication to work out how much it would cost to do more of it.
So just so I'm clear, Lord Mayor, so I can understand what I am or what I'm voting for, we're talking about that administration are going to bring forward a report on the costings for just where the mover is suggesting, or
and
are
if
we going to
I
get
suspect
a broader...
if there is any grant funding that could incorporate it, it's saying investigate how to bring. So it's a fairly broad question about how this might be achieved.
And just follow-up question, sorry, Councillor Elliott. Sorry, just a follow-up question. Have we had many ratepayers asking for, through the administration, for for Wi-Fi in that area?
I have no idea. I can ask whether this has occurred. As I say, I switch off the Wi-Fi everywhere because it slows down my...
Thank you, through the chair. Certainly when this project was first looked at a couple of years ago as part of the City Deal network, a lot of feedback, particularly from students and from residents, that the opportunity to expand the current locations would be appreciated. So that's what we've tried to do.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, just to be a pain. No, not a contrary point, but just a question, if I may. Point 5 of the administration comment points out that there is a master plan already being prepared for Victoria Park to enhance the digital capability. My reading of that advice is that this adequately addresses the intent of the question already. My question goes to whether there is, leading on from Councillor Abrahimzadeh, if there is already master plans that exist for other areas of the parklands which can already incorporate the intent of the original motion and the proposed amendments.
Thank you, through the chair. That's correct.
I might just add the master plan for Victoria Park has been is going to require some modification now that the car race is back in the area. because I think much of the work was predicated on a different use in the park. So the master plan is up for modification, I suspect.
I asked a couple of questions, Lord Mayor, so thank you. I'll make it brief, Lord Mayor. I think a motion like this essentially sets a precedent, so I'm happy to support it, but what I will do is when this investigation does come back to the relevant committee, I'll be asking administration to essentially expand that through to other areas of the parklands and other high foot traffic areas.
Summed up, thank you.
All those in favour? All those against? That's carried almost unanimously. Did you call a division someone? Councillor Snape, did you call? Yes, division. Division called. Please stand.
Council members, a division has been called. Please stand in favour of the motion until your name has been called.
Councillor Ho, Councillor Noon, Councillor Davis, Councillor Lee, Councillor Siebentrit, Councillor Snape, Councillor Giles and Councillor Abrahimzadeh.
Thank you, members. That's carried. We'll now move on to 15.3, which is a series of invitations that Councillor Noon would like to make.
I would like to speak to this motion. Look, I did think that Part 2 and Part 3 had been removed, actually, after my discussion with the Lord Mayor, because we did discuss about the several forums that we actually have in bringing the state government and ministers together.
Councillor, could I just interrupt briefly?
Yeah.
We did get a seconder, did we?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Snape, thank you. Sorry.
And I did notice in the administration comment it's got the Capital City Committee as one such forum, and through the chair I did actually make inquiries about this committee, and I was told it was Cabinet in confidence. So we don't actually get an update, is that correct, on what occurs there? So really, as a council, we have no idea what is actually being discussed. But look, to tell you the truth, I'm really not too fussed about 2 and 3, although I still think that we don't communicate with, in my opinion, the state government as well as we should, and I think that some of the stuff has occurred in the last period of time is testament to that. But at the end of the day, and we can always strengthen that, and I don't mean just by events, I mean more strategic sort of discussions. But it's actually the number one that I'm very keen on, because there was a recent state government and local government forum, and it was discussed that the Minister of Local Government, Minister Brock, and also the CEO and President of the LGA are meeting with Cabinet on a regular basis. And when I spoke to the CEO of the LGA, he was very supportive of this. He actually thought a couple of times a year, and that at the end of the day it could be aligned with those Cabinet discussions, and in actual fact that motion is his words that I used. So that's one I think would be really important, especially because they're actually doing this review at the moment about non-rateable and non-rateable institutions in South Australia, which I think is really important to keep close to the Local Government Association on this particular project, that we were working with them quite a lot in the last week to ensure that they had all the information they need so that they can actually complete an issues paper that will eventually go to the Premier on exemptions and rate rebates, which I think is really important for this council. And we apparently led this charge a couple of years ago, which was fantastic. But nothing has happened much over the last 2 years, but it's back on the table in the last week. So, yes, so I'm happy to remove 2 and 3, but not happy to remove 1.
So can I just clarify, you'd be happy to withdraw 2 and 3 and just move 1?
Yeah, I mean, reluctantly move 2 and 3, because I do think there are better ways, or we need to actually identify more ways of communicating with the state government and rebuilding some of the trust with the state government. Maybe that's just one particular way we could do that. There's probably many others. And the Capital City Committee was actually mentioned in the actual administration report, but we don't get any sight of that.
I think there is a report, Councillor, that hasn't come through yet. We've only had one meeting to date and they're confidential, and so there will be a confidential report.
Oh, there will be?
There will be,
okay,
I assure you.
I was told that it wasn't going to be. That's
I'm sorry if you were misled.
Yes.
Can I just ask your seconder if you're happy to withdraw 2 and 3 as well? Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak against or for Councillor? Yes, Councillor Davis.
I just had a question in relation to the administration's comment. Will it, as we, I suppose, summons the Minister for Local Government, would they come to a CEO briefing or to the actual chamber to give a deputation, or would this be in an hour-long CEO briefing?
I think that we would have to find a mechanism to invite him to. I think council is used generically, not in terms of this chamber. Council is not a council meeting. That was my interpretation. Is that fair, Councillor Noon? Yes. I think we're going to for highlights at the town hall rather than actually in council, because there are rules about people speaking in council so that we would not want to contravene. Councillor Kouros?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think maybe being a new councillor, we may not have gotten to the rhythm of how things are done within the council, and we do have processes and we do have ways in which we do communicate with the state government, and one of them is obviously the Capital City Committee, which we do, as pointed out, we do get a confidential report on that. We also have the government always comes and speaks to us with any major projects. They always brief us on projects that are that we need to be informed about, and I think this will just add to their list of things that they would have to do if we did put this request in. So I just believe that maybe it's through the knowledge of not understanding how the council works to why Councillor Noon felt that she needed to bring this in, and I understand that. But once you get the momentum of within the operations of the council, you would understand that we constantly do get briefed by the state government. You, Lord Mayor, are a representative of the council and speak to the government in relation to what we are discussing, what we may require. We do get reports, and we do have the state government come in, especially during times like the Women's and Children's Hospital. They came in several times discussing that matter with us, and the list goes on. So I just don't feel that this is probably the right mechanism to actually start creating something else amongst what we already have.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giles.
I'd like to just, Lord Mayor, I'd like to address some of the things that Councillor Kouros has said. This motion, in my view, doesn't talk about briefings, it talks about dialogue, and it's really important that we have a better dialogue with and are a stronger player in the local government area as the premium council for the state. It's absolutely crucial that we are given the respect by our minister to engage with us in a way that gives us that sort of credibility, and we can only do that if we seek, reach out and seek that relationship. And I think that in recent times, and the Women's and Children's Hospital is one of those issues, the Park 22 issue, the shifting of the aquatic centre near people's houses, shows that there's, at the moment, a bit of a disdain, in my view, for the relationship we have with our constituents and with the community, for the state government to ride roughshod over some of the things that we really care about as a council. And so I think it's really important that we have an opportunity to talk to the minister about our role as a local government, our role as a city council, and not just wait for them to make a decision and be briefed.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
I'm going to vote against the motion. I don't think that this is the best way of doing it, and I think it really does set the minister up to fail in many ways. What the motion actually asks for is not a discussion, Councillor Giles. It asks for the local government minister to come and give a presentation to us on the update of key sector issues, challenges and highlights for council twice a year. So it's asking for the minister to come to and present to us on their issues, and I don't think it's quite right for us to attempt to summon the minister to this chamber or to a CEO meeting. I think that I don't actually disagree with what Councillor Noon is trying to achieve in terms of, I'd love to be able to talk to ministers more often and particularly talk about some of our funding issues. We've got 4 main streets that we'd like the minister to potentially chip in for and work their way up into cabinet. But as Councillor Giles was talking about issues with the Aquatic Centre, with the Women's and Children's Hospital, and other issues, and I think Councillor Giles actually used the word disdain from our community, I would think that is not the best avenue to express disdain from our community to that minister, and I don't think that's an appropriate way of doing it, particularly when that disdain should rather be inflicted upon other ministers such as the Health Minister or infrastructure ministers and things like that. So whilst I don't disagree, I don't think this is the correct way of doing it, and I don't think it's polite to essentially summon the minister in this way, and I think far better to try and work with the administration behind the scenes through the Lord Mayor to organise more meetings or availability where we can actually have a bit more contact with the local government minister and perhaps a more informal setting with this council. So I won't be supporting it for that reason, and I think that we do need to improve our relationship with the state government, otherwise we are going to get cut out of these decisions. And I do think that we need to pay respect to the Labor government and the absolute trouncing they gave the Liberal Party at the last state election, and understand that they actually do have an agenda to put forward, and we as the City Council are certainly subservient to them, and we need to understand their agendas as well. I don't think this is the best way of doing it going forward, but I support what Councillor Noon is trying to achieve.
Thank you. Councillor Siebentreut.
I won't be supporting the motion in the current form. However, just wanted to explain why. One of the key reasons is I agree with, through the Chair, with Councillor Noon's request here to get more information and update on key sector issues, challenges and highlights for Council, but I don't believe requesting the Lord Mayor to do that directly via the Minister for some of the reasons that Councillor Davis has outlined is the most appropriate way. However, if the motion was amended to reflect wording the fact that we request the CEO to invite the LGASA CEO to come and brief us periodically on all of these issues, which I agree are important, I'd be willing to support that, but not the way it's currently stated in terms of particularly the Lord Mayor inviting the Minister to address us.
Thank you. So unless we have any further comments, would you like to sum up, Councillor Noon?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Kouros, for reminding me that I'm new to this council, but I'm not new to the local government and the local government association especially, and I go back years, and including being a CEO of council. However, this discussion was actually had with the local government association, and they totally supported this because it's only new that they're actually, I guess, representing the local government association to cabinet. So they thought this was actually a really good idea. I actually think it would look really bad on us if we actually don't actually support this, to tell you the truth, but I think that it is really critical that we actually get closer to the local government association, what they're doing. Testament to this is what occurred last week with some of the discussion I was having with the local government association on the exemptions and rebates of institutions in South Australia. So it's, you know, from my perspective, I will continue those conversations myself with these people. If not, we're allowed to do it in the council.
Thank you. I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? All those against? I think that's lost. Thank you, Councillor Noon. Shall we move on to the next item? 15.4. Did you recall that? Councillor Noon, your next item, 15.4.
Second. I'm moving. Sorry, I move this motion.
Seconded by Councillor Snape. Is there any discussion on that? No?
The only comment I would like to make on this is that we include some of the comments that the administration made, especially point 6 in the letter, because I thought those comments were very valid. And I think that that would just add weight to that particular motion.
I think that that's in train in any case, to be frank. But we will compose a letter that is respectful and not too needy. Councillor Kouros. Could you switch off your microphone, Councillor Davis?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, do we do the same thing for fringe events? I mean, Heather Kroll has put on a spectacular event and bringing...
I can respond directly. I write lots of letters to everybody. In this instance, I've had conversations with the Premier and thanked him in person and with SMSs, and we discussed it when we met last week. I've commended him heartily on the impact of not just the Gather Round but also the Live event. And I have to say that both of those events have really produced extraordinary vibrancy in the city. I don't think anyone could have predicted the impact that they both had on our economy. So I, as someone who isn't continually excited by sporting events, I have to say that this was absolutely phenomenal, and the level of vibrancy and economic impact was astounding. I think that we can congratulate him, but the more we keep writing letters congratulating him, I suspect ministers don't always read our letters to them.
Well, Lord Mayor, may I speak? I'm just fine. Congratulations to the Premier. I think we've all said that. We've all said that personally to him as well, and I'm thankful that you've cleared that you have as well through as a Lord Mayor. But I just think that we're singling out all the events. Gather Round was very successful. Live Golf was very successful, but we also have very successful fringe events. Eliminate Adelaide is very successful, and I do not want to feel that these other very successful events that we have for the city are less than the Gather Round. So I won't be voting for this, not because I don't think that the Premier did a great job in bringing this forward and creating vibrancy for a city, but because I think that all the events that we have in the city are just as important. Everyone should be congratulated for the work they do, and it is very difficult to bring these very large-scale events in, and there's a whole team of people that do that for our city, and I won't be voting for that tonight.
I think this just goes to the last, through you, Lord Mayor, I think this goes to the last discussion that we had. There are a number of things that we all want to see to revive post-COVID our city in a lively way. And look, as a resident of the city, it was just absolutely obvious that what this event did was it just felt like it was pre-COVID days. It actually it was families, it was people staying over periods of time. And I don't think any of us would say that was just a team effort and a business as usual. It was a particularly important thing to happen, in my view, because it required negotiation by a Premier, it required state government funding, and it required a whole lot of collaboration that only a Premier could probably do. So it is a little bit different, and I think if we want to build that relationship with our government, then we probably should do things every now and then instead of always be seen to be the sort of naysayers and the problemisers, but actually say, that was good, let's do more of this.
Councillor Snape.
This is just a question which might turn into an amendment. My understanding is Catherine Hildart is the actual Minister for Sport and Recreation, and I understand it's actually the South Australian Government who organised it. Peter Malinowskis is a great-looking bloke, but I'm not sure that his department or him personally, and I would have thought that the appropriate minister is the Minister for Support.
My understanding was that this was through events. Events SA, and so it was not the sports portfolio that was in charge of the activity.
Who's the appropriate
and
minister?
The whole funding mechanism was from Premier and Cabinet. May I just explain one other thing to interrupt you? One of the conversations I've had recently, and one of the things I've complained about previously, is our capacity to tell our residents and ratepayers what's on, so that many of our parklands activities occur, and you drive through the parklands and see something, you think, goodness, what's that? And it's a cheese festival or the Tet Festival. And one of the challenges with our AIDA Experience Adelaide website is they only promote the activities that they fund. Therefore, as city users, none of us know what's going on and have struggled to find information. So I feel really strongly that there's a case to be made for us working closely with tourism, and that's why I've set up some extra meetings, to line up our marketing, AIDA, and maybe have another mechanism for telling people in the city. And there's a real advantage for the proponents, whether it's the Tet Festival or the Cheese Festival, in being able to market through a central What's On in Adelaide mechanism, because at the moment it's very difficult to find out what's on and we miss it. So that's one of the things that I feel strongly about and we'll try and work with tourism for. I'm sorry, Councillor Davis, I interrupted.
Well, in that case, if all credit goes to the Premier, Peter Malinauskas, I'm happy to support this. I just think, as Councillor Giles said, we want to make sure that we maintain good relationships. And I think that if there was a minister out there who perhaps didn't get the fame, like Katrin, she might not have been given the opportunity to go and kick the footy at the opening footy. I know Peter would have loved that opportunity, but I want to make sure that the ministers involved in it, perhaps the Minister for Tourism as well as the Minister for Sport, if they did play a role, perhaps they did nothing. But it would seem to me that we should also be acknowledging that. But I'm in the hands of the mover, happy to support this if Peter Malinauskas is the only one to thank.
Shall we put it to the vote?
Do you want to speak, Lord Mayor? First of all, I must confess I'm more likely to be seen at a cheese festival than an AFL game, but nonetheless, I think the gather round was a wonderful success. I just want to make a point to, through you, Lord Mayor, to some of my fellow councillors who might not want to send this letter. There's two parts, in my mind, there's two parts to the sending of the letter to government. The first part is clearly your fantastic penmanship and the actual letter itself of congratulations. The second part is the moving of a motion in this chamber, and that sends a message in itself. And much like when, in a different matter in regards to the conversion therapy, half of it was about sending a letter, half of it was about moving a motion in the chamber and making the statement. I realise this is two very, very different things.
Councillor...
But my point stands. My point stands. It's about moving a motion of support in the chamber as well as sending the letter. And I'll leave
Thank
it.
you. Councillor Abrahimzadeh.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor.
And then Councillor Elliott, and then I think we'll put it to the vote.
Lord
Unless
Mayor,
someone has a contribute.
Can I ask if the mover is happy to vary it, and I'm not sure whether if I'll take some governance advice on this. I'm not sure whether if this would be a variation. No issues with the letter, but I just feel that we should go a step further and get some stats and a small briefing from AIDA with the economic uplift this had for our city. Is that something that we can? Well, can we elaborate on that a little bit more? I mean, that's 3 dot points, and it's great. But I want to see whether if there's any spend map data, whether if we were able to talk with our traders, whether if there were any learnings, any issues. And again, I'm not sure. I'm happy to take some governance advice, whether if that can be done as a variation or whether if that needs to be amended.
I'll give you a commitment to get that information as soon as it's ready. We believe that the sums that were quoted in the paper were a very rough approximation without any proper research. And so it will take at least 2 months for a statistical analysis. So we will get back to you on that one.
Perfect. Well,
thank you.
Yep, if that's the case, then I'll support this.
Kouros?
Thank you.
Can I just flag that I have a motion coming in next council meeting where I'm requesting exactly the same thing, but not just for the gather round, but for all events regarding spend map data for across the whole of the city, because I'm just flagging that motion's coming in.
Thank you, Councillor. Put the motion now. All those in favour? Oh, I'm sorry.
I do apologise, Lord Mayor. I know this discussion is probably more protracted than we expected, but I have a question for the administration, noting the comments of the Lord Mayor relating to achieving the effect of this motion already. Many in this chamber will be aware that I'm quite loath to duplication of effort. But I note the comments of other councillors about ensuring appropriate channels of communication are maintained between councillors, the Lord Mayor and Council and the State Government. So I wonder if it is possible or prudent to include in the Lord Mayor's report a summary of unclassified correspondence of this nature.
Sorry, could you just say that again? I've just missed
Is it possible or prudent to include in the Lord Mayor's report a summary of unclassified correspondence of this nature? Of the nature of
you mean non-confidential?
Yes, non-confidential.
Well, we could, but I don't usually send it back. There's no reason why we couldn't. So,
just in terms of
can we take it on notice and see how that would pan
absolutely.
out?
It's just in terms of obviously the effort has already been made to make these congratulations, and we're now asking to congratulate the Premier yet again. That would probably be addressed in some part by providing a summary of what correspondence has been made on some issues.
So I think it's another bureaucratic burden, but I send an awful lot of nice letters out.
I imagine you do, Lord Mayor. That's right. I'll leave the question as asked.
Councillor Knoon, would you like to sum up?
Look, it surprises me that we've been talking about this for a while. At the end of the day, it's a no-brainer for me. I'm coming from a business background. This is just normal for me to, go to the top, so to speak, and make that formal congratulations and thank you. And having some extra information in there is fine. It's a no-brainer. If you guys don't want to support it, to me, it's a bit odd. Thank you. I want a division on that one, thank you.
Division has been called.
Council members, the division has been called. Please stand in favour of the motion until your name has been called.
Councillor Ho, Councillor Noon, Councillor Davis, Councillor Lee, Councillor Siebentrit, Councillor Snape, Councillor Giles, Councillor Abrahimzadeh.
Thank you. That was carried. Councillor Noon, your next motion, ACMA. I think this is fairly self-explanatory.
I move this motion.
Seconded by? For want of a seconder, it will be lost. Councillor Elliott. Is there any debate on this matter? Councillor Kouros?
I have a question. The motion is asking to be reviewed for consistency where applicable. I have clarification from administration what they take from that, number one. And number two, how much does a review cost each time?
Through me to the CEO.
Thank you, through the Chair. The assessment would be where things like number of members that sit on the panel for board applications and are working through each of the various clauses and where applicable, ensuring consistency across the two subsidiaries. That's my understanding. In relation to the cost, I don't have that to hand, I'm afraid, for the previous work that BRM Advisory undertook, but that was a large piece of work a couple of years ago, which came to the Chamber last year to assess both charters.
So can we have an approximate cost? It's really hard to make a decision on this without some understanding what the implications are in regards to budget.
Excuse me, I think I'm a little confused about this. I think we are reviewing AIDA with... but I'm not sure that this has a cost. This is just an internal review of the charter. I think this is just lining up the charters next to each other and seeing if they match.
So I'm just trying to understand what this whole process is about.
Yeah.
So we're asking for internally for us to review, the board itself to review its process, or we're asking for the council to review the board itself to review their.
My interpretation, Councillor, and obviously it's not my motion, is that the charters will be lined up against each other to see why there is a difference between the two. So it's not a formal review, it's just using an internal process. Please?
Can we put that in there? Yeah.
I think we need more clarification and more broader of the motion, because I'm not reading it right.
Okay. What's really interesting in point 3, BRM Advisory undertook a comprehensive review of both the subsidiaries of these charters in 2021. The charters were updated as a result with the aim of achieving consistency and improvements. Through the recent process of selection panel and having a deep dive into the two charters, where I've got different inconsistencies where applicable, I actually think that they're two very different authorities, and there probably are going to be inconsistencies. But at the end of the day, there should not be inconsistencies where applicable, and where applicable is in the selection panel, is in the capping of the tenure, is in the EOI. So I've identified differences that are governance differences, and I've had a discussion with the governance officers on this. But you know, at the end of the day, the AEDA will probably have to actually be reviewed anyway as part of the charter. But the ACMA will also be reviewed, can also be reviewed in the process that's currently going to actually happen, which is the admin comments here in relation to the traders' representative committees are going to sort of merge. The charters will have to be changed. So these charters aren't just a simple sort of resolution of council. They actually have to be gazetted as well. So it's a larger process in this. So at the end of the day, you wouldn't do it willy-nilly. So while we're doing this other stuff, we should really take an opportunity, because in 2021, for some reason, the ACMA Charter, two vital pieces of governance points and processes were taken out of that charter. From the
so can I just say that Councillor Noon's right. It does miss out on the term capping, and there's no explanation for how that was removed. So it needs to be sorted out. Yes. And so this is actually a reasonable motion.
So
that's not what it's doing, though.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Lord Mayor. I'm just really need clarification. Are we? Is the administration bringing these two charters into council for us to review the consistency?
It will have to come back to council. It won't go off into the ether.
The CEO's shaking her head, so
no.
I'm.
Yes, it will come back to council. So this is work that will be done internally. It will come back to council for ratification, and it will also go through a consultation process with the two boards, and then the charter will come back to be modified, and we will vote on it. Councillor Davis, are you speaking against this motion?
I'm speaking with confusion.
Oh, it's my fault.
So. First of all, that's not what the motion says, but thank you for clarifying what the intent was. My understanding is that there's going to be no legal fees spent on this whatsoever. Is that right? Just got some questions.
Thank you through the chair. I think what we made clear to the chamber was that this would be done in-house. However, I cannot say whether legal fees would need to be considered as part of that. Sometimes when we do these pieces of work, there are queries and questions that our governance team have that may well need to be outsourced to an external legal provider for clarity. What I have said is that we won't be outsourcing it to BRM Advisory, which is the process that happened previously.
Okay. And second of all, when the Lord Mayor was talking previously Your Worship, you said that you would be the administration would be taking the two documents, putting them next to each other, and doing a spot the difference.
I think that's basically what's happened already, and there's anomalies between the way they're set up. So I think it's an internal process,
right.
And there will be consultation recommendations back to council. It will take some time.
But Councillor Noon raised some concerns of some specific paragraphs that were removed.
Through the chair.
So was that they changed from one to the other?
There appears to have been a removal of the terms of appointment. Normally it's 3 + 3 + 3, so that's gone, and there are just subtle changes, and how that happened I have no idea, I wasn't here. But not having a finished term does seem unusual.
Okay, and that's the difference between the two?
Yes.
At the moment. That's what Councillor Noon's asking for.
There's a couple of other things as well, so it's not just that.
Okay. I would really appreciate if Councillor Noon, in her summing up, set out exactly what she thinks the changes could be. She's obviously done a huge amount of work on this and taken a keen interest, far more than I'm aware of what the differences could be. So I'd love to hear from Councillor Noon in her summing up what exactly are those differences and how they would benefit, because it sounds like a reasonable motion, but I think it would be helpful to understand why we should be... I mean, we've already spent 4.5... I'm speaking of the motion now, Your Worship. We've spent 4.5 hours preparing the response as is, and I think that when we're talking about however many untold council hours our governance officer will be spending to review this, it would be a good idea to understand what that justification is specifically and what the benefits would be for coming into the motion. So I think this is one of those motions that would really, really help with a preamble in terms of what is the desired outcome and why before we start committing to council staff and resources, as there are a number of other priorities for the council, such as our standing orders and things like that our governance team should be working on. And I might also ask that we put in here a finalisation date and actually say we want this within 3 months or 6 months so that the council can expect when they're actually going to have this back.
Can I just say that the cost of responding to motions on notice is 4 to 5 hours work each one, so clearly there is a cost in all of this activity. I think the AIDA review will be finished within 4 months, 2 months, and so then it will be possible. Is this a question, Councillor Kouros?
I do have a question.
Very quick question, then Councillor Abraham.
Very quickly, if can there be an undertaking from the administration that to bring this matter in, but if there's further costs that need to be going out to lawyers or anything like that, to advise us rather than have that cost beforehand?
I don't think that the administration usually brings up the costings of all the legal advice they get from day to day. There is an extraordinary amount of legal activity around this chamber. And I think that it is probably not practical to talk of every consultation. Councillor Abrahimzadeh.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can we just clarify that it's an internal review? So if we can just put internal in there, if the mover and the seconder are happy with that.
I can't see Councillor Noon. She's hiding behind Councillor Kouros. So could you address it through the chair? Are you saying yes? So just to clarify. Yes, thank you. Councillor Elliott, and then we're going to put it to the vote after. I think it's getting silly. It's a very small motion.
The hijinks tonight. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm glad to finally get my opportunity to speak as seconder of the motion. There was just so many questions, I would like to point out it's very, very interesting now that we're talking about how much time and energy it's going to cost council to put this through when I raised earlier the duplication of efforts on a program to expand our Wi-Fi network when there is already a master plan being undertaken for exactly that matter. However, in support of this motion, I'd like to point out there is great value in harmonising charters where possible and practical to do so. So I think there's fantastic value in the motion here. And I would hope that it improves oversight for council as a whole, especially making it simpler for councillors themselves to understand what's actually going on within those organisations. I also do believe that regular and constant updates and reviews are a mark of good governance, and I think for our subsidiaries that's a fantastic initiative to undertake. So I will be voting in favour of this motion. I'll state that I'm also amenable to the
Can I just
a variation.
ask internally was a variation? The mover was happy with that. The seconder?
I am. I'm standing.
You're the seconder.
Yes,
sorry, I'm sorry. I'm a little confused about who was moving that.
I'm amenable to the variation.
So thank you. I just wanted to make sure of that. Thank you. In that case, Councillor Noon, maybe put it to the vote. Or are you going to sum up? Or you were going to tell Councillor Davis what you want to change.
Yes, I can. I haven't got my notes in front of me, but the first one was certainly the cap. In Charter 2014 of ACMA, there was the same cap as in the AIDA Charter. For in the Charter that was reviewed, or the process that was reviewed, and in the Charter 2021, that had been omitted. No one has told me why. Also the selection panel in the Charter in 2014 in AIDA and in ACMA was both 3 councillors on the selection panel. In the ACMA Charter of 2021, it's reduced to 2. No one's told me why either. The EOI process that we've actually been forced to go through is very unusual for selection of boards, and my concern is we're going to actually lose really good people on these boards because of our bureaucratic processes. So I would like to see that, especially the expression of interest process reviewed in this process. There were other points. I haven't got them on me at the moment, but I didn't review the entire charter, just this section of it, so one could make some assumptions that there could be other areas as well. So I'm happy to do more of a deep dive across the entire charter, but I'm sure there's other better people than me to do that. So anyway, that's what I can tell you tonight.
Thank you. Then we'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. I'm now going to move on to motions without notice briefly. 16, and then move on to the exclusion of the public. Item 17. This is Councillor Davis. Did you really have a motion, sorry?
Oh, no. I was moving this.
Oh, move the exclusion. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Could I ask the members of the public to leave the chamber? Actual errors.